introductions if folks are up for that. I'll just call on people as we just to go around, and I'm going to save our presenters, I guess, for last. Yeah, but Katherine, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
I'm Katherine Loper. I been teaching at Goddard for the last 23 years, and I did the carbon inventory and the climate action plan for Goddard. And I attended Al Gore's climate reality training in 2017, and then I became a mentor in the first virtual climate reality training that they had in July. 50,000 people, 10,000 people, sorry, all over the world. And I'm on the Sustainable Montpelier Coalition, and I've been interviewing gardeners in Montpelier to create a webpage about people who are growing their own food in their backyards so that more people in Montpelier can be inspired to do the same. And that's a start. Let's leave it with
Super.
that.
Thank you. Nicholas.
My name is Nick Scribner. I grew up in Vermont, actually, and I've been living on the West Coast for about 5 years and just moved back. And I see Ann Wallace, I think I know you. Yeah, I am an architect, and I'm still working for a company that works on the West Coast, but would like to be involved in some things over here, and this seemed like a good place to start.
Awesome, thanks. Becca, we heard from you, so Kara, how about you?
Hi, I'm Kara Robachek. I am the Executive Director of Vermont Energy Education Program, which does education work in schools around Vermont and New Hampshire on energy. And I'm keeping my video and audio mostly off because I've got my own child and 2 other children doing virtual learning on videos downstairs.
Sounds good, thank you. Rebecca.
Yes, hi.
We're just doing quick introductions.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was on a phone call.
That's all right.
I'm here because I'm a Deirdre fan. I'm the chair of the Charlotte Energy Committee, and we've worked together for a long time. So I'm sorry, I didn't have the benefit of hearing what other people said, so I don't know what else.
That's great, super.
Okay, great.
Jessica.
Okay. Hi, I'm Jessica. I am a current graduate student at Antioch University, New England, but I live in Burlington and I grew up in Montpelier. And I'm studying sustainable development and climate change as my concentration at school. I just did a big capstone project looking at what the possible impacts of climate migrants into Vermont will be, excuse me. So that was a pretty exciting project, and I'm interested in getting involved in more like projects on the ground that are happening in the state. So I thought this was a pretty good thing to learn about and try to become involved in. So that's me.
Super, thanks Jessica. And Lisa. Oh, you're muted.
Hi, I'm the librarian at the G. Devine Library in Hardwick. I'm also a long-term member of the Craftsbury Energy Committee, and so both roles I put a lot of programming on dealing with climate change, and that's why.
Wonderful. Well, thanks, and I'm going to introduce, Linda and Deirdre and Anne are our presenters today, and I think I'll introduce them when we get to that point in the agenda. So I'm putting you 3 on hold for the time being, but so I'm John Copans. I work at the Council on Rural Development, and I run this program called the Climate Catalyst, along with the Climate Economy Model Communities program. Oh, I see Ricky joined us there. I don't want to skip over another. Ricky, I think you dropped off. We did really quick introductions, just sort of name and town maybe. And so I don't know if you want to just say hello quickly as we get going here.
Hi, sorry I'm late. I was having computer difficulties, but Thank you. I am Ricky, and I'm from Brattleboro, which the indigenous name of is Wantestacock.
Excellent. Thank you. So I just want to give you a little quick description of the Vermont Council on Rural Development, because I think it's helpful to just sort of understand a little bit of about our organization as I get started. You know, we are committed to Vermont communities, especially Vermont's rural communities, which is basically all of Vermont communities, and to community prosperity. And we really do that as a facilitating organization. For about 20 years now, we've been doing something called community visits, where we are invited into a town to bring together conversations around sort of opportunities and assets and challenges in those communities. And the result of those processes is that communities select some priorities and build teams to move those priorities forward. We also do a fair amount of statewide convening as an organization. Typically, we have an annual summit on a topic. And really, for the last 5 years now, we've been talking about the climate economy in Vermont. Our sort of key, I guess, belief and thesis is that Vermont, there is economic opportunity in being a leader in responding to climate change. That when we think about economic development and future opportunity for our communities in the state, the more we are able to model climate solutions and rural climate solutions, the stronger a position we will be in. And I would say that's like at the state level, that's also at the community level, and really at the household level. The more we're able to take advantage and lead in that area, the stronger we're going to be from a resilience and an economic sort of sustainability standpoint. And so as part of that work, we had something called the Climate Economy Council, and there was a number of recommendations around that. One was something called the Model Communities Program that I came to VCRD to direct back in 2017. And essentially, it's similar to that community visit process I just described, but with this theme around the climate economy. And so in 6 towns around Vermont, we've hosted that Model Communities process over the last 3 years, and communities have come together and thought about opportunities around the climate economy, and then worked to put those into practice. And then at the very sort of end of 2019 and beginning of 2020, we launched a new program called the Climate Catalyst Leadership Program, and that's really the focus of today's conversation. And that the idea around that is that, you know, we've got people leading on climate with local solutions all around the state of Vermont. And we see some real power in bringing them together as a group to learn from one another, to connect to resources, and really to sort of build almost like a team approach to trying to get things done. And so we've been doing that since February, the Climate Catalyst Program. And it's kind of amazing to think back to February at this point. You know, like it just, when our Climate Catalysts applied for this program, we were pre-pandemic, right? They applied with a project in mind, with no sense of what was coming at us in terms of COVID-19. And in fact, our first session in February was at the North Branch Nature Center. We had a nice, cozy meal, and we spent 4 hours getting to know each other in person. And then, just like everything else for all of us, like the world just changed overnight in March. And what's been powerful for me to experience since March is that our team of climate catalysts, like, you know, we're just at this moment of adaptation. Like, we are all sort of reinventing so much of what we do and how we do it. And that, like, is true in our homes as, like, we balance. I mean, Kara talks about, like, you know, she's got children homeschooling right now as she's, you know, we're all just adapting, whether that's in our our home, in our workplace, or in the things we're committed to and the work we're doing. And so to me, that's like such a strong theme of our current reality. And I think probably a theme of our future reality too. I think, I don't know how you all feel, but my sense is this pandemic gives us a sense of the change and disruption that we are, that we feel like we just have to be prepared for as part of our future. You know, when we think about the cascading impacts of climate change and we're witnessing the beginnings of that, what we know is like adaptation, flexibility is going to be sort of the name of the game. And so it, to me, given that theme and concept, I felt like it would be powerful to hear from a few of our members of the Climate Catalyst from this first class to just kind of share their work and path over the last year. And to me, you know, part of this is and don't take this the wrong way, Anne and Deirdre and Linda, I don't think we should call these success stories, because the reality of our circumstances is like, it's really a matter of adaptation and trying to find our way. And in some cases, like that way is not so clear, and we're sort of, it's an uphill climb, and we're on that climb together as a group. And in other moments, there are opportunities that open up as part of this as well. And so with that, I really want to sort of focus on our three presenters today. And I think we'll go in the following order. I don't know if I told you this. I think we'll start with Anne, and then Deirdre, and then Linda. So I want to introduce first Anne Lawless from Wheelock, Vermont. And Anne applied to the Climate Catalyst. She works as the Northeast Kingdom sort of organizer for the NeighborWorks Heat Squad program up in the NEK, and has been working hard to really deepen, I think, engagement with communities up there around weatherization and climate issues. And so, and I'll just say this about Anne is like, not only does she do that, but like we just hosted a community visit process in Wheelock as well, right? So, and like Anne also wears so many other hats for the community of Wheelock, right? There are so many things happening in that town that like, I'm pretty sure without Anne sort of carrying the load, I'm not sure they'd be happening. So anyway, I want to just turn it over to you, Anne, to share your, yeah.
Thank you very much, John. That was an awesome introduction. So just a little bit more about who I am. I retired in 2018 from working in the museum community, and I got involved in local affairs and wanted to get more deeply into climate issues. So I've been serving as the Northeast Kingdom Outreach Coordinator for Heat Squad since the spring of 2019. So Heat Squad is a project of NeighborWorks of Western Vermont, which is an affordable housing agency in West Rutland. So Heat Squad is about 10 years old, and we now have 3 trained home energy auditors in not every county, but quite a few counties, including the Northeast Kingdom. So we help people make their homes more comfortable and reduce their energy costs. There's a visit that takes about 3 hours, starts with the blower door test to measure air infiltration. There's also a health and safety check. And right after the audit, we send the customer a detailed written report with recommendations and estimates of contractor costs and energy savings for each proposed project. So we help the customer find contractors, but we don't do the work. Then when the work is done, the auditor comes back for a check-in, measures again, and sends in the paperwork to Efficiency Vermont so the customer can receive the rebate. So it's a really great program, and it helps a lot of people. So I started my job in the spring of 2019 working somewhere close to just under half-time, and I work from home, which I love. So last year I did a lot of tabling at community events. I mean, it's like a dream job being at community fairs and festivals and farmers markets and employee get-togethers. It was so much fun, you know, trying to get people to learn more about Heat Squad and encourage them to sign up for audits. I also met with conservation commissions, planning commissions, energy committees, and energy champions, working with people who are really trying to move forward to help their neighbors. Also met with social service agencies, realtors, and chambers of commerce. So when the pandemic hit, things changed drastically. You can imagine, no more events, no meetings. My hours went way down. So some of the things we did in the initial lockdown, we focused on teamwork. I mean, even though I work from home in Wheelock and our main office is down in West Rutland, it's actually a lot easier to work on Zoom than it was to spend, 2.5 hours driving there. So we worked on developing COVID safety precautions for our home auditors and the messaging around that. We promoted the incredible Efficiency Vermont rebates that were announced July 1st, and then we had to kind of do it all over again when the rebates were reduced for market rate customers starting October 1st. So we gathered testimonials and photos from customers, and we created a couple of videos for at-home projects, like how you can take care of the hazards that might be lurking under your sink, and learning about, you might have vermiculite in your house. What does it look like? Because that's not a good thing. So my own strategies, for in my particular corner of the work, I reached out to people who had expressed an interest last year but had yet to commit. We did flyers and emails to reach new energy committees and support existing ones. We helped one energy committee. This was so satisfying. We helped one energy committee with a ready project. Heat Squad covered printing costs for a mailing about weatherization that went out with their tax bills on September 1st. That was in the town of Sutton. I added new contacts from the regional COVID response efforts. And unfortunately, the response to all that was really disappointing. I mean, I'm sure I could have done more, but I think people really focused on, immediate COVID challenges. And in some cases, in some ways, weatherization took a back seat. And also, in general, people don't sign up. In the summer, nobody wants to think about home heating and their wood pile and all of that. It really only starts to pick up in the fall, in the early fall, like as soon as we get a cold weather. And look at what we have now. It's a virtual heat wave. So increasingly, I relied on our partnership with our Regional Planning Commission and VDA. They do a monthly e-news. They helped us get the word out, and we did a webinar that was with Efficiency Vermont that was about heat pumps. And my piece was customer testimonials from NEK people who had signed up and were really happy with their new heat pump. Let's see. Fortunately, I'm not the only person in the kingdom who's promoting Heat Squad, because we have a pretty active website, Facebook, and a blog that's run from our headquarters down at NeighborWorks in West Rutland. New customers have come in via word of mouth from their friends, from our auditor in the Northeast Kingdom, and also from our weatherization contractors. A lot of people who were leads last year converted to being customers this year. I also worked on some grant proposals, and that's a huge piece for us because we work to keep the home energy audits affordable, $150 versus market rate, which is somewhere the lowest is, I think, around 400, 500, maybe even higher. So we did really, really well. We doubled our Heat Squad leads over the same months in July and August over last year. And then just a few stats, all NEK weatherization projects in 2017, there were 24. We entered in 2018, all NEK weatherization projects, there were 34. We did 2, that's 6%, our first year in the NEK. In 2019, we did, out of 70, we did 38, that's 54%. And in 2020, we're projected to complete 120 projects, which is pretty awesome. I mean, the rebates were a big factor, definitely. So I just want to mention that Heat Squad, 60% of Heat Squad customers are low and moderate income. So we're helping the most vulnerable Vermonters and the most energy burdened. On average, our customers are saving almost $1,000 a year on their energy bills, and each project on average reduces carbon emissions by 5,000 pounds per year. And that's it. Thank you. Hope I didn't go over my time.
No, that's great. Thanks, Ann. Really appreciate that. You know, one of the things that has been a recurring theme for us, and just to kind of reflect back, Ann, on what some of your experiences is, I think we've thought a lot about sort of the Venn diagram of climate response and COVID-19 response. And I think, you know, our conclusion is that there's a lot of overlap there, right? There's a lot that falls into both categories. But at the same time, I think, like Ann, listening to you, like having a hard time getting some traction over the summer, right? Where the sense was the pandemic, to engage people on something that felt tangential to the pandemic was that much more challenging, right? Like it's sort of where heads were. So like that's one of the things. And maybe that's a good way to introduce Deirdre, our next presenter. You know, Deirdre applied with the project of sort of uniting an energy committee across a school district. Deirdre's in Charlotte and has been active working with the Charlotte Elementary School. But the idea was, how do we engage sort of the broader school district, especially in this time where we've had merger of school districts, so we have new school districts, and it feels like sort of matching our energy committee structure or our sort of citizen advocate structure with the school district structure so that we can effectively engage them and work together as a team. Like that was the game plan sort of back in January and February. And like when you think about what kind of change has happened, our schools have been kind of, I mean, we're all on the bleeding edge of this change, but man, our school systems have had some real intense times, I feel like, over the last 6 or 7 months. So with that, but like yet, I think what you'll hear from Deirdre is like some real creativity in terms of how to respond. So anyway, there you go. Go for it, Deirdre.
Thank you, John. Yes, definitely the Venn diagram visual that you just described feels very relevant to what I set out to do. Again, pre-shutdown, where, like you described, I've been very involved in the Charlotte school, in the school garden, farm to school coordinator, expanding that. At one point we had a grant for 1 year. I was able to be sustainability coordinator, and then also several years on the Charlotte Energy Committee. It's a small town, like many small towns, and you almost seem like the town and the school operate too much separately, whereas the people and the families are involved in both, but they seem to sometimes operate separately. So like John said, I applied for this program with the intention of convening a climate committee over the 5 towns that encompass the fairly new Champlain Valley School District. That's Charlotte, Shelburne, Heinsberg, St. George, and Williston. And that contains 6 schools. And the idea was really to try to reach out to and encourage all different types of stakeholders within the school committees to participate, as well as energy committee members from those towns. And my thinking was to begin by convening those people to try to create as diverse a group as possible, and really support the convening process. And then with that group, start to see what their priorities were, what things were already happening. From Charlotte, I knew some things that we had done that I wanted to share with the other towns and just make it easier for them to replicate. And I also knew what I wanted to learn from the other towns in order to just improve sort of the climate status of all the towns and the schools within the district. But yes, mid-March, schools go home. It became obviously very difficult. I couldn't go to school anymore. I couldn't go to the classes where these things were being discussed, or the various meetings. And it also just felt irrelevant and even inappropriate to try to continue to push on these subjects when everybody involved in schools were clearly they were in a severe active emergency management. So I took a step back and, dealt with my own children coming home from school and those sorts of things. But it was mid-March and spring was on the horizon. So I knew the school gardens were at all the schools and not getting any attention. And in addition to that, remote schooling, just following that conversation, what schools were dealing with, feeding students clearly was at the very top, was one of the top priorities and a top struggle to meet that need. At the same time, I heard that our town food shelf, which is generally open every other week, had already increased its hours to being open every week. So with that, I thought of the school gardens, and the school garden obviously all of a sudden felt like it could make a very meaningful contribution to this situation. So even though the school wasn't in session, I just went and filled it with as many vegetable seeds as I could, and anticipating the summer and knowing how challenging it can be, obviously not knowing what the summer would look like, but it can be challenging to keep up with watering and weeding when it's not at my house. So I put one notice in Front Porch Forum explaining that the school garden had been planted up and there were opportunities to contribute to both the town food shelf as well as the school, which was closed, but it actually increased their meal service program. And I've been involved in the school garden for years, and I've put out requests for summer participation every single year, and have always been disappointed. With one Front Porch Forum posting, 10 weeks of garden tending was filled with volunteers. I just felt like it was just an indication of where we were. Obviously, gardening had become one of the hippest hobbies to take up while people were home. People didn't have summer plans. They were home with their children. They wanted to contribute. They wanted to be part of something bigger, sometimes not quite sure how to do that. And I also think that the fact that it was so local and it was so community-based, at the same time, everybody signed up for 1 week of work. So in terms of distancing and doing things in a very COVID safe way, it also met that new need for selecting activities. So I was incredibly pleased with that. And as you know, we had a very dry summer, so I couldn't be more appreciative of all those volunteers. And everybody watered, left notes for each other on a little notepad that's at the garden. And I guess in the summer, my one regret is that I didn't invest in a scale and leave a scale at the school with a request that people weigh or measure in some other capacity. I tried to be the one harvesting to be able to tally at the end of the summer, but sometimes other people participated in that too. I have a collection of photographs because I asked people to take a quick picture of what they were donating and send it to me. So it just would feel like the end of the summer. We've had our first freeze. The garden is pretty much done for the year, but it'd be nice to be able to round out that project with a little bit of a report of how much we donated. But it was considerable. Every single week, things went to both the school and the food shelf. And at the same time, again, getting back to how this fit into my original plan for within Climate Catalysts, I was able to reach out to the other schools and basically find the people like myself who had thought of the school garden and just thought, there's no school, there's no structure, but I'm just going to put seeds in and see what happens. And that was just, all of a sudden it felt like, oh, this is now the entry point to what I was hoping to do in order to bring the schools and the towns that now comprise this new school district together. And within all these overlapping crises that we're in right now, I love that it's around gardening and growing and personal health and as well as public health, these links to the community, stronger connections between the school community and the town in terms of helping in the garden and the food shelves as well. So indirectly feel like it actually, moved forward quite nicely through a different avenue that, that the crisis sort of created. And then a second opportunity, so sort of similar concept of trying to still meet my original goal, but via a different angle, is this fall, the work of the Charlotte Energy Committee is very focused on a home weatherization project. And I may need to pick your brain a little bit more after this, where we've donated a lot of DIY simple weatherization materials to the town food shelf as an energy shelf, and now want to support families in town through a distance, maybe with FaceTime consulting way to help people weatherize their program. We thought at one point that we had an intern who was going to help us. The intern fell through, but now via CVU, the high school, back in session, but only part-time in an in-person fashion. I am right now in touch with various adults who work with students who realize that, who'd love to have additional structured opportunities for students to be in the community, to be engaged, to be learning, because three days a week are at home in our school district. So again, that's in the works right now. So I'm hoping that goes sort of in the same way as the school garden did. So in the end, it really feels as if instead of kind of developing a committee structure first and then seeing, okay, what sort of projects should we work on? The overlapping crises of health and economy and equity and the climate, that all sort of shook out to the garden and food growing during the growing season, and then supporting people with home weatherization where they'll have a safer, more comfortable, more affordable home. That feels like a very logical now project to work on for fall and winter.
Great. Thanks, Deirdre. I should have given folks a little more of a sense of the agenda. I think we'll hear our last presenter, Linda, and then I want to just open it up for folks to ask questions of our presenters. And then I'll talk a little bit about the climate catalysts and the opportunity to join the next class. But I want to, when we think about that overlap between COVID and sort of climate response, food and gardening has been a really strong area of overlap. Another one has been sort of biking, and sort of there's a surge in bike buying right now. There's a surge in bike riding, and Linda Gray, who is the chair of the Norwich Energy Committee, and just, I would say, sort of, if you want to talk about someone who's got a deep experience in terms of implementing climate programs in their community, Linda is it. Like Norwich, I mean, just to give you an example, Norwich does the Solarize program. Most communities do the Solarize program once, and maybe they come back to it 2 or 3 years later. Norwich has this routine. They do the Solarize program every single year because they know it's something they just need to keep working on with their community. But Linda applied to the Climate Catalyst with another program that she's a part of, which is an e-bike lending library. And in particular, sort of thinking about how do we convert those people who take advantage of this e-bike lending library, how do we convert them into people who buy e-bikes and use those e-bikes instead of cars to get around? So with that, I'll turn it over to Linda.
Thank you very much, John, and I'm really pleased to be able to share the project. So John asked us to talk about the project itself and the challenges we face. So I'll start with my description from my application for Climate Catalyst. So that was my project would be to develop a protocol for effective contacts with people who borrow e-bikes through the lending library that's being set up in the Upper Valley. One element we want to beef up is our contacts with borrowers so that a significant percentage of them become regular e-bike users. So the background is that there's a great bike advocacy group in Burlington, a Local Motion, and they run an e-bike loan program in Burlington, and then also one that travels around the state. The Norwich Energy Committee was able to be part of that traveling e-bike lending library in August 2019. And we were just stunned by the interest. And so we knew we had to do it again. And as John mentioned, our committee experience is that programs need to be repeated many times to change people's behavior. So last fall and winter, we worked with other Upper Valley Energy Committees and Local Motion to set up an Upper Valley based arm of Local Motion's e-bike loans. We got donations to cover the equipment, the bikes, and operating costs for the first year. Energy committees from 4 Vermont towns and 2 New Hampshire towns lined up to host the program in 2020. And so we made our plans for a loan program running from April through October this year. And we aim to offer several short test rides on some days and then multi-day take-home loans as well. In Norwich, we collaborated with our library as the location for the bikes. Other towns would work with their rec department or from volunteers' homes. As I mentioned, my particular focus was to pull together an effective sequence of contacts with the bike borrowers, and that with the goal of getting a lot of them to change how they get around in their daily lives. We came up with a fairly substantial contact plan. Standard would be a pre-loan survey, and then a post-loan follow-up email, and that would include another survey, a resources sheet, and contacts for a V-bike consultation. And that's a group based in Brattleboro. They have state funding to help households and businesses choose the right e-bike for their needs. So that's a great fit for our needs. And then also follow-up emails on other bike events. And then optional, depending on volunteer capacity, would be a separate phone check-in, a mid-loan rike with a current e-bike user, and a post-loan event to get borrowers together. That's the project outline. And so here, the list, the challenges. So the pandemic lockdown in the spring meant that Local Motion, and therefore we, couldn't run the loan April, May, or June, as it turned out. So we were accepting that we just couldn't do the loan program at all this year, but then Local Motion worked out a protocol in June that complied with state guidelines, basically cleaning the bikes, wearing masks, and staying distant. Reps from our 6 towns got together and we worked out a revised schedule going from 5 weeks per town to 3 weeks per town so that everybody still was participating. We got started at the very end of June, and the loans went and are still going really well. I think, as John hinted at, some aspects of the pandemic helped increase interest in biking, just more flexibility in people's daytime schedules this summer, less car traffic on the roads. In Norwich, we had 40 different borrowers, some from the same household, so not 40 different households. And I know now of 6 separate purchases of e-bikes, so that's 15%. Local Motion's goal is 20% of the borrowers purchasing bikes after 12 months. So we may meet or exceed that. We didn't do the optional contacts that involved other people, setting up the ride with an experienced e-cyclist or trying to get the borrower cohort together. We just skipped that. In Norwich, I did do follow-up calls to our borrowers, and the content of those conversations indicated to me that they were worth it. In many cases, they helped prompt people to seek out the V-bike consultation. We have had repairs of bikes to deal with, but we have dealt with them, and so it's good to know that they are manageable. And our program very much depends on volunteer capacity. One of our 6 towns had some changes that reduced their available volunteers, so they had to back out of their loan period, but the towns before and after were able and interested in extending their periods for a week each, so it's worked out. We had a group meeting about a month ago. We learned that other area towns would like to get involved. The consensus among us who were doing it this year was that a 3-week loan period was actually just fine for each town. And so that meant we could add other towns into a full schedule for 2021. So we will for sure do this again next year, and perhaps with a couple more towns involved.
Thank you, Linda. It's pretty neat actually to hear the three of you share these stories. And you know, to me, one of the words, I guess there's two different words. One is opportunistic and entrepreneurial, adaptive. It just feels like we're at a moment where the best laid plans are requiring change and adjustment, and or like the surveying of the scene to figure out where are there some key opportunities given the current sort of dynamics and landscape. And I feel like I hear that in all of the work that you all have done, like really thinking sort of strategically and trying to figure out where in the challenges that we're facing, where are there some opportunities or ways to adjust and to adapt. You know, at this point, I want to just open it up to see if anyone has questions for Anne or Deirdre or Linda. We're a small enough group that if you do, I mean, you could use the chat function to do that, or feel free just to unmute and ask a question as well. And then finally, I'll just talk a little bit at the end about the Climate Catalyst program and this next class. So questions for Anne or Deirdre or Linda? Any, I wonder, you know, I was pretty explicit with them about the focus of this being about their project, because to me, that's what's interesting. I wonder if you each would just give a quick sense of Climate Catalysts, and if there was something, you know, when I think about the program, I think about sort of, there is the connection to one another. There is, we're pretty intentional about bringing in some guest speakers. So sometimes there's connections to our guest speakers, or it might be that I facilitate a connection if there's somebody that I know. I've been working in this world enough that I've got some connections. So sometimes I can make an introduction for folks. And then so I just wonder if you all might share a little bit of where you found some value in participation, just like a quick, I think that might be helpful for folks who are thinking about the program to hear. So Linda, go for it.
Yeah, I want to say that I found the value to kind of be in two areas. So one in particular, I want to praise John because he does have a ton of knowledge and a ton of connections. And so to give just one example, that V-Bike consultation thing, which is a perfect match for what we were trying to do and try to link people up so that they could follow up and feel comfortable about making a purchase. So John clued me into that. So yay, John, thank you so much. And then the other things in general, I wouldn't say that with my particular project that contacts with the other members of Climate Catalyst was distinctly helpful on that. However, I'd say that just hearing about everybody else's projects gave me ideas and was extremely useful as a member of an active energy committee, extremely useful for ideas for other things that we might pursue. So I just thought it was very helpful. Like I have attended the VCAN conference many years, and so I end up thinking often of the Climate Catalyst as kind of like a little mini VCAN conference, in that you make these connections that you don't know in advance exactly how productive they're going to be, but they turn out to be that way. So
thanks, Linda. Anne?
I agree. I concur with everything Linda said, especially the part about John. And I'd also like to add that I think it was really hard for us to switch, or it was hard for me, speak personally, to switch from the in-person mode to the Zoom mode. So I think that the next group probably isn't going to have that difficulty. I think John did a great job of making it happen, but I really missed getting to know my colleagues, because some of them, after the pandemic, the ones that were working on projects that were very similar to mine, they kind of had to drop out. They just weren't able to do it anymore. So I was sad about that, but I think going forward that problem won't occur. And I would also say that, and I think maybe Linda touched on this, just hearing what other people are facing in their projects and learning how they approach their workarounds to get over those boulders that are in the way is totally inspiring. And even if your project isn't the same at all as what that other person is working on, you really learn a lot from how they approach things. And that's something that's invaluable. It's like learning a life skill that you take into all other parts of your life. I found that very valuable, and I still do. And I think we're connected with each other, and we can, keep up those conversations too. We have a resource. We have a this list of resource people.
Great, thanks, Anne. Deirdre, you have anything you want to add?
Well, I completely agree, Linda, Ann, with everything that both of you said. And yeah, just as a quick addition, I think we all entered this program with a strong focus, a strong concern around the climate and all the issues. That's very much where that's the crisis we were focused on. So we all already entered as interested problem solvers and wanting to engage with each we around the best ways and various creative ways to approach the climate crisis. And then within a month, we had new crises stacked on top of that one to also contend with. And obviously, certainly at first view, what we were doing seemed no longer relevant or no longer possible. But I've really enjoyed the sort of side conversations that we've had within this group about really expanding the view, layering these various crises on top of each other, and seeing with a reframing, reprioritizing that we've noticed within ourselves, but also people in our community, seeing what falls through all of those, all the requirements of all of those various crises to become, right, the win-win-win-win approach, right, which weatherization, cycling, gardening, I think the three of us here have all really experienced, right, whether your focus is the economy or equity, the climate, food, like all of these things. That's been very, very inspiring to me, and just really amongst all of the struggles and the difficulties since March, to be able to be engaged with a group that similarly likes to, likes that extra challenge of how do we creatively try to do as much as we can in the most efficient way. So thanks to John, and thanks to all of you.
Yeah, and I should give Deirdre a little shout out. One thing that Deirdre initiated that I think was really rich is the Energy Action Network solicits pitches, sort of policy pitches, as part of their summit. And Deirdre initiated a conversation amongst the group, kind of a sidebar, optional conversation around what are some ideas around climate and COVID response that we could develop as a group, including one that I still think has some real potential that we just need to find the right venue for, which is like this idea of building sort of a climate service program. We were calling it like the Climate Corps. And as we think about unemployment and sort of the economic dislocation that's happening, at the same time, we think about sort of how to respond to climate change, sort of building a core of people who are doing this work in communities is sort of like an AmeriCorps program. It's something that we feel like has some real potential, and we're just going to have to figure out where we can build support and find some resources for that. So, you know, at this point, I'm looking at the clock. It's 11:53. I think folks have a general sense just from whatever materials I've put out about the Climate Catalyst. We have a deadline to apply of October 7th. I just want to open it up if there's other sort of specific questions around the program or the application process. You know, one thing that I think about, when we think about this first class, I was pretty explicit about having a pretty well-formed project as part of an application. And I think given the narrative we just heard from Linda and Deirdre and Anne about like that flexibility and to some degree sticking to the project and figuring out what are the different angles to stick to that project, but also being flexible about the projects. I would say that that's something that I think about for this next class. The reality is we are in a permanent state of change right now. And so to some degree, coming up with a project is I think helpful, but I think I'm also open if project development is actually part of their participation in the program in terms of really figuring, it could be a general concept that really gets refined as we go. So that's one thing that I've been thinking about. Are there other sort of questions or curiosities about Climate Catalyst or other things that I can answer for folks? Hey, Ludi, welcome.
Thank you. I guess I got here just in time for the close. But Anne has been on participating with you all, and I'm glad for that. We'll have our, she'll give me a report and we'll be right there for you all.
I appreciate that. Ludi's the executive director of NeighborWorks of Western Vermont down there, and man, they do great work. Ricky, I see you've got a question. You can either, unmute or do that via chat, however you like.
I had applied for the last session, and I had not received any critique about my proposal about how maybe it could have been better. And so I was wondering if applicants this year have any assurance that if they aren't accepted, that they can get feedback about how they can do better.
Yeah, I'm totally open to that. And in fact, Ricky, I would be happy even before October 7th, if you want to sort of have a conversation about sort of your project and thinking about like the fit, I'm happy to do that as well. And I would open that up to any of you. You know, to some degree, this is like a formal application process, but like, I think what makes the most sense is for me to be really accessible to folks. And I'm really happy to sort of have some one-on-one conversations as folks think about participation. One of the balance points that I think I really want to find, and when I think about participation, look, we don't charge anything for people to participate, right? It's not like but what we ask of people is sort of their time and sort of commitment and dedication to the work. And that's not insignificant in terms of like, people's time is just so valuable. What we find in this work is like those who are doing this work in their communities are often doing 10 or 15 other things as well. And so I'm really sensitive to making sure, finding the balance point between engaging enough so that people are sort of trying to get to know one another, but also probably not too much because you all are busy and doing a lot of other things. So just know that that's something that I'm always thinking about. I mean, I think our sort of routine at this point is probably a monthly gathering via Zoom with no drive time. That tends to be pretty manageable for folks. But then one thing I've made available is like I'm available for sort of one-on-one check-ins as needed for members of the group. And so I feel like to some degree, I'm happy to match members' interest in further engagement. That's really, I guess, a principle for me is really trying to sort of, if folks want to dive a little deeper, I really want to be a partner in doing that. So, other questions or curiosities about the program? I really want to express some appreciation for Linda and Deirdre and Anne for being willing to be presenters today. I really appreciate sort of that openness, to taking your time, but also to putting yourself out there. I think there's a little vulnerability in doing that, and so really appreciate that, and appreciate all of you. I mean, you're here because you care about this work. You know how important it is. To me, one of the fundamental sort of beliefs in this work is that, you know, we need solutions at every scale of human organization. We've got to act globally. We've got to act at the national level and at the state level. But we also know that we have to act in sort of a local way, and that in fact, any big picture solutions need local practitioners and local champions really to get things done at the local level. And to me, what's inspiring about working with a group of leaders like this is that there's just that dedication, that willingness to put the time in, and the adaptability that I feel like is just so important right now in terms of really figuring out where are the opportunities given our current set of circumstances. So thank you, everybody. Really appreciate you participating. And like I say, please feel free to follow up if you've got questions or further curiosities. So thanks, everybody.
Bye.